So, welcome everybody. Rita McGrath here. You probably knew that. My guest today is Michael Gervais, who is the author of a very cool book called The First Rule of Mastery. And I'm so delighted to be speaking to you, Michael. Note how on brand I am. So, Michael's one of the world's top performance psychologists. He has a podcast about this topic and has done a lot of original research, really showing how the mind is connected to high performance in many areas, in ways that we might not even really understand or know. So, Michael, welcome. It's still a pleasure to see you.
I am so happy to be here with you. Thank you for the kind introduction, and I'm excited for the conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. So let's start off with this sort of central theme of your book, which is that a lot of times we sort of hijack. Did it go out for you there?
It did, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I lost you when you said something about the book.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'll sort of, we can fix it in post. One of the first sort of red threads that runs through the book is how we quite unintentionally kind of hijack our brains by allowing external factors and what other people think of us to take a disproportionate role in the decisions that we make and the things we decide to do. And the book is full of like little anecdotes about that. So I guess I'd be interested in where did that concept come from and how did you get involved with helping people come up with antidotes?
Well, okay. So I'm classically trained as a psychologist. So I've been drawn to this world of psychology for most of my life, even before I really knew what the field was. And then I eventually, went on for training as a sports psychologist with a specialization in high stakes environments. And when I was 15 years old, I was a good little athlete. Surfing was my sport. And there's two types of surfing. There was what's called free surfing, and then there's competitive surfing. And in free surfing, you're exactly what it sounds like. You're free to try things out, to do what feels natural, to be connected to the wave and, be your very best in hopefully the most heavy, as we call it, circumstances. And you don't talk about it. You don't brag about it. You don't ask if somebody saw it. It's that all of that would corrupt the feeling of being completely tuned to the heaviest part of the wave. And then in competition surfing, it's exactly opposite. You're being judged, you're being critiqued. There's people on the beach that are, friends and foes. And the whole thing is about force ranking and stacking of points to see who's the better. And I couldn't square between the two. I could do it in free surfing, but then come competition, I felt like I was so dislocated, so disconnected from my abilities. And it was primarily, now I'm at this time, I'm like a 15, 16-year-old little kid. I was so disconnected from it because I was, quote unquote, up in my head. And I wasn't able to quiet my mind down to do the thing that I knew I could do. So it started there when it was a beautiful morning. It was like 8 a.m, great conditions. It was a competitive competition. And this person that I was surfing with against, he paddled by me, and he was 4 years or so older than me. And he paddled by me during the competition, and he said, Gervais, you got to stop worrying about all the things that could go wrong. I surf with you every day out here. You should be kicking our tail, but I know you're up in your head. And I thought, man, what is he talking about? And he's right. And what is this thing about the mind? This is as a 15-year-old kid. And it set me down this path because I was over-indexing on looking a certain way rather than being a certain way. And it started young. It started organically. And I thought it was my problem. I was the one that was different. I was the one that privately had this ailment, if you will. And I was embarrassed about it for most of my life. So I didn't talk about it. I didn't bring it forward. I'd never told anybody that I didn't know how to stop worrying about what people were thinking of me. And then I got into the field of sports psychology because I was fascinated by this idea that you can train your body, you can train your technical skills, and you can train your mind. And the best of the best of the best of the best, they were not leaving one of those to chance. They were training their craft, their body, and their mind. And as I was afforded to really understand how the best in the world were training their mind, they too had the same thing. Most of them, not all, but most of them have this underlying fear of embarrassing other people, of letting other people down, of not being good enough in the eyes of mom or dad, even though they've made $100 million on their last contract. And so I felt like I need to research it first. Like, what is this? And so I wrote a quick little pithy article for Harvard Business Review, and they said, a year later, they called and they said, okay, you touched a nerve. This 3-page article that you wrote was the #1 downloaded article on HBR. So, can we encourage you to write a book about it? And
Nice.
so that's how it happened. And there was not an existing body of research around it, and it's still new. But I drew from Allodoxphobia, which is, a very long name for social phobia. And so that was the original kind of like, what is this thing? Why are we afraid of other people's thoughts or opinions, I should say? And so that's where I started, and that's where it led to the book.
That's a great idea. Well, so for those of you that have not had a chance to read the book is called The First Rule of Mastery: Stop Worrying About What Other People Think of You, by Michael Gervais, who's my guest this week. And one of the things I really love about the book is you sort of go through each section of it, but each chapter ends with some very specific things people can actually do, which, that's kind of rare for a lot of books, to give people such sort of personally actionable advice, which I thought was really a strong feature of it.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I missed your question.
What made you decide to think to do that?
Which part? The applied piece?
Yeah, the actionable piece.
Well, theory only takes us so far, and good theory, the best applied practices, is built on rock solid theory, and then needs some tweaking for the unique audience that you're speaking to. And so I love studying theory and understanding it, but the application of that theory is where change takes place. And so I just wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking from the ivory tower and telling personal stories, but as opposed to doing just those two, I wanted to make sure that there was a way to hook around the concepts and actually take control of this thing that can be overwhelming, which is this excessive worry about what are they thinking of me and how do I do something with it. And so I just want to make sure that I never left, my roots of how do you train your mind to be your very best.
Mm-hmm. So the book is written in three parts. So Unmask, Assess, and Redefine, which I kind of like as a narrative arc. And I was watching an interview that you did with, I think, the CEO of Alaskan Airlines not too long ago, in which he said, it's so hard to get people to see some of the places where their performance isn't up to stuff, where they're letting the team down, and that. And I would add on top of that, the more senior you get, the harder it is, because nobody's going to tell you. So I think one of the things that is so interesting about the book is your emphasis on self-awareness and being able to really unpack, what's going on in your head. And you've got some really dramatic examples of people, falling off of mountains.
I lost you again, Rita. Oh, I lost you again. Okay. Yeah. I lost you when you said dramatic.
I do not know what is wrong with the system, but we'll just start over here. So you got some examples in the book of some really dramatic situations in which people, partly out of being distracted or partly out of being sort of talked down to by someone else,
oh no,
didn't sort of perform at their peak, and you offer some very solid reasons for that, and then how people can kind of train themselves almost to not be so readily influenced by what other people think.
Well, first of all, I've been fortunate to have lots of interviews, and I can tell when people have read the book and they haven't read the book. So I just want to say thank you. Oh, I lost you. Did I lose you, Rita? Oh, you're back. Sorry. Okay, let me
That's one
go.
of my obsessions as an academic. I read them, put little pieces of paper in.
Yeah, good. Okay, so self-discovery is a foundational process to really understand who you are. That is what psychology is. It's the study of yourself. It's the study of how do your thoughts and emotions work together to, shape the environment that you're in, both inside your own body and eventually the behaviors that take place from that. And so the self-discovery process is kind of ground zero for the whole thing. And we do go and highlight some of the, I think, most powerful self-discovery processes. And three of them, just to be research-based, the three that help build awareness of your inner life are, according to best practices, mindfulness, journaling, and then conversations with people of wisdom. Those are the three best practices to help people really know themselves better.
And when you talk about mindfulness, you also include a section on meditation, how you become more just aware of your surroundings. And I'm always surprised when I talk to people who actually understand how the brain works, how little we take in from our environment, like how blind we are. And there's a very famous educational video which makes the rounds about a bunch of people passing a ball backwards and forwards, and you're supposed to ask, well, how many times did the ball get tossed to a person in a white t-shirt? And this gorilla literally walks through the scene. And about half the people playing the scene didn't even see the gorilla. They were so intent on the task that they were working on. So I think, that idea of pulling back and taking the space to really understand what's going on in your brain it's not so easy. And I think one of your sections is called "There's a Party Going On in There."
There is a party going on. Yeah. I mean, our mind is, if we try to do something kind of clever here for just a moment, it's not exactly how it works, but it's a good analogy, is that if you think about your brain as the hardware and your mind as the software, now they are embedded, so they're not actually fully separate systems, if you will, but the hardware, your brain, is designed to scan the world, if you will, and find all the threats and dangers. That's the great gift our ancestors gave to us, is that, the ability to survive. Now, when your brain is busy, the party is happening up in there, and it's busy scanning for all the danger, it elicits thoughts and natural thoughts like, oh, I need to respond, or, oh, what's happening over there? Or, boy, I should start planning for such and such because it could go wrong. And all of those are very important. It becomes problematic when it becomes excessive. So it is knowing that fine line between obsessively worrying about what people think of you and caring about other people's experience. So nowhere in would I ever suggest that we need less caring about others. We actually, in return, probably need more caring, evidenced by the conditions of our modern life. But I don't think it is possible to really care about another person, to be invested in them and their well-being, if you are in the throes of your suffering, if you are in the throes of trying to figure out how you're going to be okay. And so that old adage, like put your life best on first so you can put your life best on a loved one, holds true with psychology as well. When you know how to be present and grounded and work with your thoughts and emotions, to work with your internal experiences, and you're in command of yourself and you can eloquently adjust to whatever the external conditions are, then you can be a great teammate for other people. You can be a great partner. You can be somebody who's really there to bring the best out of the other person. And when you get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people with that same lean into life, meaning they take on the responsibility like very seriously, foundationally and fundamentally, to invest in their own understanding of themselves so they can be a meaningful contributor to another set of people, because the collective aim is something that is far bigger than any of us could do alone. and you honestly get people to do that internal work to develop their psychology, their technical skills, and their physical skills, and there's a mission that's larger than self, you get something really cool. And that's been my experience of how the best in the world actually experience their potential rather than just kind of talk a game and be caught at the lower levels of what they're really capable of.
That's amazing. So, one of the, I guess, realities of life right now, and you talk about it when you talk about identity, is who am I? Like, I'm not son of the blacksmith, so I'm, Smith's son. I'm defined by so many other things, and at the same time, we've never had more richness, in the world. We've never had more things to entertain us, more things to eat and drink, more things to, be astounded by. And yet we've lost a lot of these institutions that seem to connect us, that seem to tie us together. And what I'm wondering, that it keeps cutting out like that. I don't know why it's doing that.
I know. I hope it's not on my end.
I don't think it is. I think it's on our end.
Okay. Yeah.
So my apologies.
Oh, no problem. No problem. No problem for me.
So I think it's interesting is we've gotten to a state in society where people have never had more sort of abundance to reflect on, and yet we're not part of communities, we're not part of social groups, we're not kind of developing those deep networks of trust that you talk about when you talk about how you can help other people perform at their best. And I wonder if some of the ideas in your book might be antidotes to some of that.
Yeah. So is the question how to help others be their very best? Is that the core of the question?
I think that's what, I guess that's one. Yes, I think I would love to hear about that. Also, just how to help people create genuine connections with each other.
Yeah. So the connection piece, obviously, Dr. Waldinger from Harvard, he's penned the 80-year study on what it means to be a good life. And so his most recent capturing of that longest longitudinal study on the good life pointed to two things that are most important. One is connection, and the other is a sense of purpose. And so when we think about connection, I am reminded of, there's a recency bias in my answer here, but it is from the CEO of Alaska Airlines, Ben Minicucci, when I asked him that same question you asked me, and he says, it's really important to listen hard. And I really enjoyed the simplicity, the non-science rhetoric, of just listen hard. And if I pair that with a couple other insights from research, one, and this is very applied and very simple, is that when you are speaking to someone, when they're speaking, make sure that you are giving them all of the dignity they deserve by holding eye contact with them. So when another person's speaking, that's your turn to listen hard and to really see them. So make eye contact if you can. So those are kind of two things. The other piece on the connection is to begin with simple curiosity. I can say in a very pithy way, ask questions about who they are, but it's far deeper than that, because we are all going through something. We are all in our own way carrying past trauma, or working our way through something that's hard. And so certainly if you're an adult. So I think it's really important to try to understand what's underneath the surface. So if you really want to connect with people, why? Because according to the research on what makes a good life, it's the number one thing: connection and purpose. Part of being being more connected to other people is to listen hard, make sure that you're seeing them with dignity so they feel seen, and in return, they'll likely work to see you as well. And then, the third is to understand what's happening below the surface. Now, the last thing is to be a better connector. Be better connected to other people, is to really know yourself. So when you're working to connect with another people, you're not sucking the life out of it to have your needs met, but you can feel safe and secure and grounded and clear and present, so much so that you're in service of doing that with another person. And now it changes everything. When I'm struggling, when I'm really in the throes of my suffering and I'm in pain, it could be physically or it could be emotionally, I want to be taken care of. And at the same time, I want to show that I'm strong. Either way, I'm not there for another person. I'm taking care of my needs to show that I'm strong, or to have that sense of like, please take care of me, as opposed to, look, here's the condition that's happening for me. I just really want you to know it so that, we can be in it together. And it's important that you know me and I know you, and fill in the blanks. Now we're more partners and connected, as opposed to playing this other shadow game of showing like we're okay, or kind of quietly sucking the life out of a relationship because of the pain that somebody's in. So I hope that those handful of suggestions can help.
Sorry, it cut out there for a minute. Connected to others as opposed to playing a shadow game. Maybe you could repeat that.
Connected to others instead of playing the shadow game where we're not bringing our true self forward and hoping that they understand us, or pretending like everything's okay. It's the shadow games that keep us disconnected. And what I'm advocating for is to bring your honest self forward. And when you do that with another person that feels safe and challenged appropriately to bring their honest self forward, you get somewhere. You feel connected in there.
I like that. I like that a lot. And that's something we can all work on and get better at.
100%. And I'll add this, is that in my experience, and this is, I think, a little provocative and maybe even dangerous, but some of the most honest rooms I've been in are locker rooms.
Oh.
Yeah. People walk around naked. So you see their full self in that way. Everything that happens on a sport team is publicly observed, not by fans. Yes, that's the case, but in practice. And it's statted and it's measured and it's force ranked against other people. And the mission is often brilliantly clear. And you play a role, Rita, you play a role in this shared mission. And if you're not doing your work, if you're coming into work drunk or high or lazy or apathetic, or not taking it seriously, or afraid to really go for it, or whatever it might be, you get called out. And it's oftentimes not graceful. It's oftentimes very direct, and it's got some barb to it. But it is the tribe very aggressively saying to the doer, you in this case, like, hey, that's not good enough. And or when you come in and you are pushing limits and you have your priorities in line and you're really holding a standard and you're amazing as a teammate, the team says, Rita, like, hey, we're with you. You're showing us the way. So you get celebrated and called out. And they're very honest relationships in that way. Now, there's lots of problems in locker rooms. Okay. There's lots of problems in locker rooms. But then I go into the boardroom, and there's some of the most dishonest rooms on the planet. There's angles, there's shadows, there's politics, there's power plays, there's manipulation. Very few boardrooms are earnestly and honestly and fundamentally as committed to the mission, as opposed to committed to self-preservation or self-gain. And so the two worlds are worlds apart, or the two rooms are worlds apart. And there's probably a healthy mix between some of the decorum of the boardroom, that does not show up in the locker room. But the honesty, the radical honesty, that is what changes your future. When you can be committed with other people that are also committed to radical honesty. The best in the world, Rita, as you well know, they don't have the patience for all of these shadow type of games. It's a fundamental commitment to radical honesty, because they know if they're not working from that place, they'll never really understand what they're capable of. And that takes tremendous courage to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what I think is also very interesting is in management, boardrooms, C-suites, those guys, it's actually quite hard to get direct and immediate feedback on your performance. In sports, you get filmed. They go over what you did. And I often reflected to myself that if we did that for leaders, right? If we said, okay, I've often thought
I lost you when we do that with leaders.
It's really bad. I'm wondering if we should set up another time if we can't figure out our technology. But I've often wondered what business would be like if we applied the same discipline of performance improvement to managers or leaders as we do to athletes. And so imagine that you had a film of the way that you led the most recent board meeting, and when you said that there, so and so didn't respond, and this person never spoke up, and you didn't encourage them, and you'd get better, right? If you had that level of sort of ability to go back and revisit it. And yet we don't make that investment in our leaders and managers. Maybe a little bit in a coaching relationship, but we don't see it.
I love that you're bringing this up, because so I've been in big sport, some of the most consequential environments in the world. Not all stick and ball sport, some of these action sport worlds, but just take elite sport for a minute. And those environments rest on high performance feedback. Mm-hmm. And so there's like this loop of feedback that is constantly happening every day, all day. And there's a formula to it. There's actually bands of high performance, and there's a formula that sits underneath of it. There's like immediate feedback, which is the richest, the gold standard of feedback. It's happening like real time right now. And then within 90 minutes is the next glow, then within 6 hours. And then once you get past 24 hours, it's almost meaningless. Mm. It's almost...
Which...
Yeah, please.
Go.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And then like what we find is when that feedback is, so it's timely. That's kind of the first band. Then it is clear when it involves an understanding of the doer's perspective, and it becomes accurate. So there's a timeliness. There is an understanding from the doer to get to clear and accurate feedback. And then if you bubble it in something that has a regard for the other person and a kindness involved in it, if you get those attributes in, you end up being able to turn quickly on a high performance feedback loop. Now, you don't need all of those, but when you do get those together, it allows for speed of feedback. When somebody feels critiqued in a way that doesn't have regard, and they don't understand your experience in it, meaning that the athlete's experience in it, it quickly leads to a defensiveness. It leads to a classic stonewalling type of experience where there's a separation between the two. And one of the best practices we do on Olympic teams or world-class sport teams is before the whole thing gets going, we invest in the relationships with in self for self-discovery. Then we share that so we can know our teammates well. And then one of the third things we do is we ask everyone to be very clear about how they want to be coached. And the rest of the coaches and the rest of the athletes are taking notes. Oh, Rita likes to be coached immediately and privately, and to make sure that there's questions before the feedback comes. Or she likes to be coached immediately. It doesn't matter if it's private or public, and give it to her straight. Don't kind of beat around the bush. Don't give me this kindness thing. I don't need it. And some are like, look, I'm going to follow the military dictum: praise publicly, critique me privately. So like, as it doesn't matter really what it is. I just need to know, how can Rita best take feedback? And because I want to be a great partner to you. So that's that's what I think business grossly misses, and therein lies this awesome opportunity for organizations that really invest in high feedback loops.
Absolutely. And part of what you talk about, and I would completely agree, is Amy Edmondson's concept of psychological safety. That I don't think any of the things that you talk about in the book can happen if you're in a toxic environment where there's a sort of a zero-sum mentality, where people are, oh, there's scarcity, right? I've got to be competitive. But so I know that you work with companies. So let's say you come into a company, the senior leadership has said, we're not really happy about, call it our culture, and we want to move towards this more feedback-rich, performance improvement, mindful kind of way of working together. How would you start that?
I first spend time to understand.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening, because there's an advantage of having fresh eyes, but there's a discovery process to really understand what's been happening, what is the current climate, who are the top earners that are actually defining culture favorably or unfavorably, so I need to understand first. And then from that understanding, usually clarity emerges on what the next steps are. And so there is, unfortunately, it just takes a little time to really understand. And then the other thing is like not just understanding the culture and the climate and what's worked and what hasn't worked, but what is the grand ambition? And oftentimes what happens is the grand ambition is quite clear to a handful, but less clear to many. And so the ELT, in many respects, has missed a job description in my mind, which is they need to be and embrace the chief repeating officer. So yes, they're the head of strategy or operations or sales or whatever it might be, but they also need to embrace this other capability, which is, again, like cheekily, the chief repeating officer, which is over and over and over again, repeating the same type of things in clever new ways to keep the main thing the main thing. And I learned that from asking a very simple question across scores of elite head coaches. And I would ask them, and this is probably like 20 elite coaches, head coaches, what is the hardest part of your job? And in a summary, they say something like saying the same thing over and over and over again, and not knowing when I'm flailing a horse, like, overdoing it, or I'm staying true to the things that matter most. So it's finding that fine line between the two. And most people don't want to be perceived as simple. So they reduce the amount of times that they make sure they're keeping the main thing, because they don't want other people. Again, this goes back to FOPO, fear of people's opinion. The greatest constrictor of one's potential is that they pull back from being repetitive of the culture, repetitive of the main ambition, repetitive of what is working well, repetitive celebrating excellence, repetitive of showing what good looks like. And they pull back from that in fear of people will think that they're too simple or that they're not dynamic enough. And so they talk smart and they say, and they move on too quickly to, whatever's next, but they're missing the chief repeating officer role.
I love that. I was reminded of a phrase that the CEO of one of the major financial services companies said once. He said, when I'm trying to persuade people or communicate what my strategy is, I don't ever think I'm finished with that job until I've repeated myself 700 times. He said, I'll be on time 632, and there's some guy in the back of the room that'll go, oh, that's what you meant.
I spent 9 seasons with the Seattle Seahawks, actually 10 seasons, sorry. And so after 10 seasons with the Seattle Seahawks, and we got to a Super Bowl and won one, and we got back-to-back Super Bowl experiences, and we lost that one in dramatic fashion. So it was year 3, I think. And at the beginning of every year, the head coach and the head coach, Pete Carroll, and I essentially built this business of taking best practices of mental skills from elite sport into business. And so it was like our third or fourth year. And at the beginning of every season, he would make sure that he's installing the spirit of the culture. And it's about a 3-week, process. And it's heavy lifting early, and then it gets a little bit lighter for those first 3 weeks. And then, never miss being the chief repeating officer every day. Okay. So it was about the third year, and we started to have the staff teach it back to everybody. And so instead of him teaching it, or just him and I, or some version, he would ask the strength coach and the nutritionist and the medical staff and the assistant coaches to teach it to the athletes and the other folks. And there was 3 rules. This is how concrete I want to be about this. There's 3 rules that the organization has. Well, actually, Rita, I think you'll find this to be fun. There was the central theme, which is always compete. To compete to be your very best as a person, as a dad, as a partner, as a teammate. Compete to be your very best in everything that you do. So that's the central theme. Then there's a style that we want our organization to hold: great effort, great enthusiasm, great toughness, and to play really smart football. So that's our style. And then there's 3 rules. And those 3 rules, and none of these change, by the way. Okay. These are like pillars. They're rocks of the culture. Be early is rule number 1. Okay. And so now we're at this place, and the equipment person is going up and teaching these rules. And he says, okay, I want to talk about, I'm sorry, I actually misspoke. Rule number 1 is always protect the team. Rule number 2 is no whining, no complaining, no excuses. And rule 3 is be early. And I got ahead of my story. So the medical person gets up there and says, okay, there's 3 rules. I want to talk about rule number 3. Be on time. And I look over at Coach, and Coach looks at me, and we're like, Jesus, like it's been 3 or 4 years of teaching these rules, not just once a season, but all year long. Be early is fundamentally different than be on time. Be early means that you've got your life priorities in place. You've organized, your day so that you can be there just a little bit before start, so you can settle in, so you can be there for another person, so you can be like part of something. That's what be early means. Mm-hmm. And if you're late, it's a disruption. And it's a demonstration that your stuff outside of the room is more important than the stuff inside the room. And so the medical personnel gets up there and says, okay, everybody, it's about being on time. Oh God, it's that subtleness 4 years in. And that subtleness makes all the difference in the precision that we're trying to create about why be early is the principle versus being on time. So I that's a long way of saying the 700 number sounds right, and maybe too small. It could be 7,000. I don't know. It's over and over and over again.
But I think what you just did there was really brilliant in that you took a very simple phrase, be early, right? But there's a whole psychology behind that given enough words you could explain, but to be able to sort of simply capture it, but then understand what the richness is behind it. That's where I think a lot of leaders go wrong. Like they'll come up with these short catchphrases, but they don't take the time to really like open up the logic behind it, the reasoning behind it. Because when you say it like that, it sounds, I get it, right? I know exactly what you're going for. Reminds me of, Tom Hanks was recently interviewed about some of the most influential things that had an impact on his life. And he said, I had a director once who basically said, be early, know your lines, have a point of view. And that was their little rubric. And he said that had really influenced him. So I think those kind of really simple mantras that help shape what you're doing are so valuable.
Yeah. And I want to take this 2 ways. One is, the chief repeating officers need to, of course, be about the first principles. whatever those words are that, the consultancy firm came in and said, we're going to help you understand your values, whatever. Okay. Like, you have to be about them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't hold other people to that standard just because they make you a lot of money or score a lot of touchdowns, that's your culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's the lowest performing, it's the lowest performing behavior that is actually the floor of your culture. So when somebody is a high earner, but they're a jerk to other people, that's your culture. If you make a lot of money, you can be disrespectful. So my point is, like, these simple phrases. First, as a leader, you need to really embrace it and be about it. And if you can't be about all four, let's say, you need to absolutely be the beacon for two of them. And then the same thing, if you get three, I think you're onto something. Okay. But if you're only about one of them conveniently and the other three are like for other people, it's a problem, Now, the reason you want these things to be so simple is that so people can understand it and then they can repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
So what the head coach does is he'll have every day, there's a full team meeting. So an all hands, if you will, or a full team meeting, and says something about strategy, something about tactics, something about technical, something about mindset, and something about culture. That's how we would structure our full meetings. And then the room breaks into half. Offense goes into another room, defense goes into another room. And then those coaches reinforce the same key message about culture and mindset. And then they do different tactics and strategy game planning. And then they break out one more time. Quarterbacks go into a smaller room, running backs, these are all position rooms. They go back into another room, the wide receivers, and those coaches reinforce the same message on culture and mindset for that day. And then they break into even more nuanced strategy and tactics and technique. So now from, let's call it a Wednesday, you've got a clear message that's cascaded throughout the entire organization that reinforces the deep work that the consultants decided were the important words. By the way, those words have to be organically yours.
I think so.
Right. Like if a consultant comes in and does it, okay, that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that, but they have to leave you with something that is like, you can rhyme with it. You can whistle to it. You can, be about it, when you're walking into a meeting or whatever, like it has to be fully embodied. And that is where this animation of spirit comes forward, where people like aspirationally are not just words on walls that look good, but it's the animation of the spirit of those that gets cascaded throughout the organization every day.
So why do you think we have such a sort of, what do I call it, epidemic of, people feeling disengaged, people feeling disrespected, people feeling as though they don't belong, this whole setback for diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts that we've been witnessing is creating a lot of cynicism. Why do you think we have so much of that?
It's like, okay, I am very fatigued by this idea that we're in unprecedented times. Okay. The dark ages were really hard.
They were.
Okay. Stone Age time was pretty brutal. Okay. So this unprecedented, at the deepest level, this moment is unprecedented. Like, you and I have never been in this moment. So our job is to try to just do our very best to figure out the rhythm of this conversation and to advance it in a way that is stimulating to us, and also, maybe helping the listener be a little bit better in their life too. So this moment is always brand new. And if I am anxious about how you're thinking about me, or how I'm presenting myself, or anxious about all the things that I need to get done, or all the things that could go wrong today or in my life, I'm not going to be here with you. So I do think, and my research, loosely supports this idea, is that the anxiousness that is sitting underneath people's rhythms of their day is more pronounced than it's ever been. And it's not because the external world is all that dangerous or jarring. It's that we have not built the internal requisite skills to meet the stressors of the world. And finally, we're saying, oh my gosh, I don't like how I feel. And I'm not keeping it in anymore. I'm not putting on the mask. I'm not pretending like everything's okay. Because we had some of the great leaders in the sport world say, my mind matters. My emotional life is intimately tied. And I'm not doing it this way anymore. I've got some anxiety, some depression. I've got some addiction. I've got some stuff I got to work out. And I'm not a Roboton. I know you want to just think like I'm a performer and an entertainer, but I'm a real person. And so they've in our world, they've created some space for the rest of us to say, yeah, me too. You know, like, hey, how are you dealing with your anxiety? Hey, how are you dealing with your depression? And so when people are fundamentally anxious, it oftentimes rests in a set of skills that they can work through to be just a little bit better. Therapy, there is medication, there's mindfulness, there's exercise, there's nutrition, there's being in service of others. You know, those are a handful of what we call best practices to have a strong inner life. And so it's a long way of answering a very beautiful question, why? And I think anxiety is the thing that is really struggling. Or is a main struggle for us. And there are some very clear skills that this beautiful science of psychology has to offer us.
That's inspiring. That's really inspiring. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is that we're still kind of trapped in this mechanistic model of organizations, you know, where it's a hierarchy, it's about mass production. You don't bring your whole self to work. You come in and what was it Henry Ford famously said, you know, why is it when I want a pair of hands, there's a brain that comes with it?
I've never heard that. That is awful. Oh, God.
It was spoken in great frustration. And I think we're in this transition where, I mean, I think the good news is we're finally able to talk about mental health in a way that isn't completely stigmatizing.
Well, I think there's still a stigma. I like that you said not completely. Unfortunately, I think there's more work to do, more opening of the aperture. Mental health as an initiative doesn't grab traction with the entrepreneurial spirited, like ambitious person, but mental skills as you know, as an initiative does. So I'm not saying that mental health is not important. Of course, it's foundational, you know, but I am pointing to mental skills as a way to help people meet the demands of the moment. Is what we learned from elite athletes is that you can train your technical skills, physical skills, and mental skills. Why would we leave one of those up to chance if we want to be great? And then crosswalk that into business. There's technical, tactical strategy stuff. There's by the way, you do have a body. Let's make sure that that's tuned so it's not, you know, causing pain and a distraction to like the good life. And you can train your mind. How about it? And so, you know, and I want to be like so crystal clear that training your mind does not necessarily mean sitting on a couch and having somebody, you know, ask you questions about early childhood. That's kind of the old way of thinking about it. You can train mental skills the same way you train physical skills by doing sets and reps of skill building activity. Confidence, cornerstone for great performance, is trained. It's not like this mystery. You train it from the way you speak to yourself, and you're in control of how you speak to yourself, and you can practice how you speak to yourself that is grounded in past experiences that give you the right to speak to yourself that way. And then when you practice it, it becomes like a different way of engaging with hard, challenging issues. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but you can train your mental skills. And that is what elite athletes represent in the world of mental health.
I love the idea of going from mental health to mental skills. I think you're right. I think that kind of reframing it that way could get a lot of people who otherwise would be like, oh, no, I don't need that.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I just need to get a little more sleep.
I'm
Like,
sure every
it's true.
excuse in the book, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there was a topic that I'm particularly interested in, which is the question of making courageous decisions. With your team or on your own. And what I see in companies a lot, and I don't spend as much time in the world of elite athletes, but I do spend a lot of time with companies. And what I see is people will see something important happening. They will maybe understand what it could mean. And then it comes time to take action on it. And they seem to just freeze. And so then the thing happens and everybody goes, oh, wow, we didn't expect that. Or if we did, we didn't expect it to hit us the way that it did, or whatever the excuse is. But how do you help people become more courageous when the moment calls for it?
Oh, I love that question. Okay. From clarity to conviction, if we just think about those two, words for just a moment. Courage is what sits in the middle. Okay. So first you need clarity about what really matters to you. Okay. And that is a bit of self-discovery on a vision of what a compelling future looks like for you. Clarity on your purpose, like what are you really doing here? And your personal philosophy. So your personal philosophy is like this expression of how you are going to live by your values and virtues. And so those three bits of work, your philosophy, your purpose, and your vision, become the base for that work on clarity. Now, when you're really clear about what matters, then you need to have some conviction about it when it's hard. And how do you have conviction when it's hard? Is that you train your mind, your mental skills, so that when you get into that difficult kind of challenging moment where you could pull back and be small, or you could stay true at the edge where it's very hard to stay present, that you deploy those mental skills because you know how important what matters to you is to you. So what happens for most people is when they have some clarity, which is a fine bit of work to get done in and of itself, and then they get brushed up against of somebody of influence, and that maybe executive or a mentor or I don't know, a media person or somebody in the world says, Rita, like, I hear what you're saying, but are you sure you've really thought this through? Or Rita, you don't want that. That's not, look, there's other important things that we got to get done, not that. And then you go, oh, right. Okay. So it's missing the conviction. How do you have the conviction? Is by having deeply invest well ahead of time the mental skills so that you can have the courage to be about it. Okay. So what are those mental skills? Knowing how to be calm, knowing how to be confident, knowing how to deeply focus, knowing how to trust yourself, knowing how to stay optimistic when you're in a difficult, challenging situation. And I can go on and on and on. Okay. So from clarity to conviction, I'll give you a concrete example is that animates this without really much work, is that the parents among us will recognize this, that the safety of your child matters. And if you're walking on the sidewalk and your son or daughter decides to kind of run out into the street to chase a ball or whatever it is, and there's an oncoming car, you will do whatever it takes to stop that car, right? And you will run out into the street, you'll get loud, you'll throw something at the car, you'll do whatever it takes. Because what matters to you is so crystal clear that you'll go and do the hard thing. You'll even put your life at risk. And so just doing that bit of hard work in advance of knowing what really, 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 really matters to you does make a outsized impact in how you show up in the world. And then when you combine that with mental skills so that you can eloquently, gracefully, forcefully be about it, when it's hard to do so. That's how the greats do it. Whether it's the Michael Jordans of the world or the Mother Teresas of the world, whatever that person is that has changed an industry or even a global understanding of what we are capable of, they are clear on first principles and they've got the mental skills to back it up. That's how we live a life with great conviction and courage.
I love that. I think that's just great. Well, this time has been flying by, and I know I have a duty to release you when we agreed. So
thank you, Rita.
Maybe just joining us sort of toward the end. My guest is Michael Gervais, author of a book, The First Rule of Mastery: Stop Worrying About What People Think of You. And the book is really practical. It's full of great ideas, good sort of, oh yeah, I remember now, I shouldn't be doing that. So where can people go to learn more?
Rita, thank you for hosting a fun conversation and celebrating what I think is an important piece of work for people to be just a little bit better in their lives. So best place is the podcast. Findingmastery.com is our website. And you can go to, where all the podcasts are played. It's called the Finding Mastery Podcast. And those would be the two best places to understand, what I'm thinking about and how our company is going about helping other organizations solve the human performance challenges.
It doesn't matter what industry you're from or what technology you use or what you are. At the end of the day, it's humans, and humans are messy.
Isn't it? Isn't it so? It's so true, Rita. It is so true.
So thank you for shedding a little bit of light on how we can.
Thank you so much.
Get that. Thank you.
Thank you.